Okay, why don't we get started here? I will start now. I'm Jerry McHugh Jr. I'm president and owner of San Juan Resources, and today I wanted to provide some perspective and insights on this blue chip basin, the San Juan Basin. I'm going to look at the future hydrocarbon potentials, the longevity of the basin, and the strong upside as we come into our second century. First well was drilled in October of 1921. In addition, I'm looking to get others interested in the San Juan and expand my connections in this industry, foster education, and discuss provocative ideas about our industry and the San Juan Basin. Okay. I'm supposed to have it click here. I'm not getting anything to move on my PowerPoint. Can't get anything to move. Okay, here we go. Okay, today we'll discuss intro perspectives on the San Juan, some really history of the last 40, 50 years, and I'll talk about my perspective, what it's been like to be in the basin for me for over 40 years. Then we'll have a Caracas gas field story from 1988, where it was a nothing project and it turned into a pretty significant field. Okay, let's get started here. State of New Mexico. Many of you know it's San Juan resides in both Colorado and New Mexico. I'd say with the 24,000 active wells in New Mexico, there's probably another 8 in Colorado, bringing it to 33,000 wells. We're in the Four Corners region, a beautiful part of the country. Our locator map here for the San Juan Basin, this is only the Mancos and Dakota showing, so from 4,000 feet in this area to 8,000, 7,800 feet in this area here. These are the only wells turned on. Here you can see sandbars from the 50s, 60s development. The oil window is going to be south of this line here, and it's going to extend up this way. And then our gas window is going to come down here, not quite down to the oil window, and it'll be in this area here. We're closer to the heating of the San Juan Mountains in southwest Colorado up in this area, so that's why it's much drier in the north. This is the BP Rosa area. WPX who drilled these horizontal wells up here. And then, of course, this is the south central area with currently DJ and Enduring drilling 1-mile and now 2-mile laterals. Okay, the San Juan is stacked pay. It's primarily a Cretaceous basin. By last count, I think there were only 20 wells that had drilled through the Cretaceous into the Pennsylvania in the inner San Juan Basin. Coal bed methane is the most recent development, if you don't count the Mancos, of continued great reserves, 1,000 BTU gas. Right below it's the pictured cliffs. Mesa Verde is type locality up here at the National Park, Point Lookout Cliff House, a strong high BTU producing zone. And then you've got the Gallup sandstone, stringers and the bars we saw, and then over in the Mancos area would be in the south and east part of the basin. And then I call the Dakota the workhorse formation. It's always there and mostly dependable. More recently, the Mancos formation has grown, obviously, where most of our drilling's been, and it's from the base of the Mesa Verde to the top of the Greenhorn. And then Niobrara, Sanasi, Carlisle, Juana Lopez are some of the very productive members in the Mancos shale. So, oh, by the way, I wanted to give credit to Marion Oil and Gas and to Hillcorp for some of these slides. They're very, very helpful. Average daily rates for gas, or excuse me, cumulative production. So they really didn't get started drilling a lot in the San Juan until post World War II. That's when the large interstate pipelines were built from the San Juan, and the 5,400 TCF of gas broken out accordingly. You can see here the unconventional Fruitland, how it took off. Really the past 25, 30 years for incredible production out of there. So conservative estimates show that the dry Mancos alone would produce 60 TCF, and some say it's more than 100 TCF equivalent of gas. In our total production chart here, we really start when most significant production happens after the war. In the oil, you can see some of these Gallup trends were discovered, drilled 35,000 barrels a day, volumes for a pretty considerable period of time. But there was steady gas growth in those periods. This is the Gavilan, the West Puerto Chiquito area, post-energy crisis. And then you can see just before gas was deregulated how it just slipped off here pretty significantly. And then you can see about the Amoco research in Cedar Hill, how the coal bed methane and all the leveraging that companies did just grew up to 4 BCF, 4.5 BCF. So this is a telling slide with regard to how much capacity there is available to get out of the San Juan Basin. And last count I heard that they're probably moving 800, maybe a BCF of gas. I think Enterprise is 800. So then this is the new Mancos updates on Central Basin, the in Canada WPX initial drilling. So these are the new entrants in the San Juan in the past 5 years. Logos, PE backed, bought WPX and some of these Energen properties in red. DJR had bought Elm Ridge and then had a reverse bolt-on with the Encana. They're PE backed as well. Enduring PE backed also. They had bought Chevron first and then reverse bolted on WPX. Hillcorp, they bought out all of ConocoPhillips wells about 4.5, 5 years ago for $2.6 billion. And then BP is one of the interesting ones. February 28th, it was acquired by ICAV, which is a German renewable facilities company. They'd done deals in Europe, and so BP and ICAV were familiar with each other. I'm excited about this buy, to hear that they're long-term players in the basin. That's what I hear from some people there I talk with, and ought to be very interesting. Intra-USA gas asset coupled with renewable reserves. This is a El Paso composite map. It just shows how much infrastructure there is in the San Juan Basin. New Mexico-Colorado border here. Blanco Hub, where the gas is priced. Moving to California here, an initial 30 and 34-inch trunk lines, main lines. Ignacio used to take the gas northwest to Oregon and Washington. Since then, all that Wyoming gas has come south through here to handle all the additional coal bed methane. Transwestern built a plant and facility here to take, I think it was 500 million a day south here to the main line, taking it to California or backhauling it to Texas. So that's what can happen right now. Okay, the natural gas commodity prices have not been a very pretty story, mostly dropping here down on the down to the $2 level. I think the other day we were talking with some people, and it's probably about $1.58, $1.68, $1.70. But one thing I wanted to point out here is the basis. If we had this going out 30 years, we'd see that the basis averaged 20 cents, maybe 30 cents. So we were pretty typical basis form right in here. You can see when the Permian gas comes on in 17, It goes up to 45 cents right here, and then it blows out to 80 cents and more. This chart here on over here. So we're seeing it come down, maybe because the NYMEX is so low. But that's some of the commodity that we're challenged with. Okay, I've worked the San Juan Basin for 40 years. I began out of college with Dugan Production. And if I can hit the thing here, it might work. I did land support and regulatory work in Farmington. In 1983, I went to work for Nassau Resources. That was my dad's company. He's Jerome P. McHugh Sr. and had been a San Juan producer since 1967. Okay, it's finally working. There's a Tom Dugan there on the right and my dad on the left. Both Tom and my dad had been my career and business mentors, and learned a lot from these characters over the years. We won't talk about parent-child relationships in this one here, but I thought I'd mention that. With land and regulatory operations, geology, marketing, and a little bit of experience there, and probably a lot more stubbornness. I left my dad's company in 1990 and formed San Juan Resources. We've operated and drilled wells, put together leases for drilling projects. Currently, we operate over 40 wells from Dakotas to Mesa Birds, Woodland coal bed, methane to PC wells, and we have some oil we operate in the Lindrith area, Gallup, Dakota, and Mancos wells. We also have 300 non-op wells. We've leased over 45,000 acres in the past 10 years. I have a strong team with Lori Walters, leading the company in the past 15 years as CFO and financial controller. She handles a variety of responsibilities in many aspects of our operations. We could not do what we do at San Juan without Lori. Incredible employee and even more amazing person. For the past 10 years, we worked with Duncan Shepard on the left and Rich Bosher in the middle, consulting engineer and geologist respectively. They've made significant contributions to our well ops and Mancos shale oil and gas projects. In both of these projects, we're looking for financial and or other operational partners who will take us to the next level. And more importantly, I like to find the right fit in partners too. I think that's best. We also contract with Walsh Engineering, and there's a fabulous group led by Foreman Vern Andrews, along with Jimmy McKinney and Mike Beasy. Here's a locator map focusing in on the specific new work here in the San Juan Basin. The DGR and Canna area, IP 90 is about 434 barrels a day oil. I've got a 28,000 acre project here to the west, which is a Mancos oil project. And then in the dry gas window, I've got this McSims project here. We're offsetting Hickory Apache well, which produces, it's set to be a 6 BCF EUR well. Rosa, there are 6 BCF EUR 1 mile laterals well here. But then the real kickers are the 2 mile laterals that are 13 to 14 BCF type EUR wells. Key on that is the average IEP for 90 days is 9.4 million a day, and they really don't show very rapid declines. What I wanted to do next was take you up here to Caracas. And when I worked for Nassau Resources, my dad's company, in 1987, we put this together. And back to my good old El Paso maps, the only facility in the whole unit was this Northwest Pipeline Connect right here. There was all sorts of dry holes and experimental drilling in the 50s. They tried to form a unit up here, it got contracted. And you can see some of the McHugh Nassau stakes in here on some of the initial wells that they were going to drill. zero infrastructure. Here's the same map done by a draftsman. So there were some acres in here that Chevron owned, about 10, 12,000 acres, and we offered $5 an acre for them, but Chevron wanted 10. We settled at 6. So we thought that was a pretty good deal over time. 2 Dakota wells were required to form it here in the southwest and then the northeast. And then we saw that the Fruitland drilling was coming on, and we started marketing for coal bed methane, but not being in the Fruitland fairway, it was really a tough sell. People wouldn't touch us with a 10-foot pole. But Nassau and my dad eventually got partners and drilled 60 to 70 Fruitland coal bed wells and discovered some Pictured Cliffs gas over here. Got production up to 9 million a day. Backbone of the gathering were these lines here, and then these were all connected up to the main system at this existing CDP. Dad's company sold out in 99, 2000, and Energen eventually gets hold of it. So with some capital and technology and horizontal drilling, we got the production up to 30 million a day by 2015. So after 30 years, this is a going viable asset. There's potential for horizontal Mancas for 13 BCF type wells. Really a great example of a gift that keeps on giving. I just thought it was an interesting story. Much of what we see here in the challenges today are really similar to 1987 when Nassau originated this project up here. Looking for partners to take these to the next level in the next 3 or 4 years. And I look forward to meeting new people during these interesting times. We have several of us are competitive athletes at San Juan and Walsh, and I know that the mindset of a lot of us is really trying to get better. So I hope your IQ has jumped a bit on my short presentation. I've tried to keep it to about 20 minutes, and we can have some questions afterwards. And finally, I would say for all of you, I encourage you to continue to hang in there. Just stick with things, because my experience has been that things usually work out okay. Looking forward, other opportunities for additional Zoom meetings. How is this basin positioned for the future? How can our industry market itself in a post-COVID world? I'm hoping manufacturing demand picks up and we still have lots of American uses for hydrocarbons. And then what Liebrecht oil was like then and what it's like now, I'm sure it's got a just as interesting, if probably not more interesting, Caracas type story. So at this point, willing to open it up to questions, comments. I think everyone's, you can unmute yourselves because I didn't mute everybody. So anybody want to jump in, please feel free to.
Hey, Jer, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
So, such a long story, such a long and positive story around hydrocarbon extraction. How is that area moving towards the renewable opportunities? I know little, but would maybe expect that it would be a good place for solar. How's the area looking in that respect, and how would San Juan view if you suddenly sort of had an opportunity to think about getting engaged in some various aspects of renewables? How would you think about it?
Well, that's a really good question, John. I know there's a land use issue down there. Many of the people who don't like our industry point out how many locations we have. We're trying to put a lot of those locations on pads where you drill horizontal wells. We already have a relatively large presence between solar panels to run facilities, to run combustors. But as far as a large scale, I don't know if the San Juan is really in that game. Does anybody else in the room have any ideas on that?
Hey, Jerry, Bob Brooks. I think the utility in Albuquerque announced that they were in partnership with the Jicarilla Nation to put in about a square mile solar farm. I'm not sure of what's been announced about progress on that, but,
Okay.
you know, I think, I mean, 640 acres at least, so that'd be a pretty good size solar facility. You know, and then
Yeah, I think the Jicarillas and their energy company have been doing that, making sure that they just, the theme is that they care for the land and they don't want to disrupt their water. Water is more valuable than gold. So, yeah, and I think the local utility, P&M, I think is big in solar just because they have so much dang sun down there.
and I guess I see the partnership with the oil and gas industry being that, you know, the nameplate capacity of a solar plant produces power, you know, produces that power 15% of the time. So if you're trying to displace coal, let's say, with solar, you've got an opportunity of using natural gas to be the 24/7, you know, backup for the 85% of the time that solar is not being able to generate its nameplate capacity.
Okay.
So,
And I think Jason just put a note on here that P&M coal electricity will most likely be replaced with solar natural gas.
Yeah.
And I think that's the mandates that I think the state of New Mexico has been pushing to get out of hydrocarbons.
yeah, and there's some good tools for scoping that out on NREL's in Golden. The National Renewable Energy Lab in Golden has some online calculators where you can look at what price of natural gas, you know, gets you, you know, how many essentially cents per kilowatt hour. And so you can flip those economics around and kind of look at your natural gas reserves and sort of see what your wellhead price would be to supply that base load, to back up the 85% of the time when a solar farm is not generating power.
Okay.
So yeah, it's online. You know, they have online calculators. Probably in an afternoon, you can kind of scope that out, what the economics are. And I think what you see is, you know, if you think utilities are paying 5 cents per kilowatt hour or 4 cents, you can flip it around and see what wellhead price you get.
You sound like a solar engineer, Bob.
Well, I do everything. Don't we all? Don't we all?
I have concerns with the renewables, and in a post-COVID world, I don't know how much those renewables are funded by governments with subsidies and stuff, and I don't know if you have these kind of debts going through, if governments are going to be able to support these kind of alternative energies compared to natural gas. And so it's an interesting thought if natural gas can market itself more, because we have a lot of it and it doesn't need to be supported through government subsidies. So those are my thoughts.
Yeah, that's a good point, Lori.
Yes, thanks, Lori.
Hey, Jerry, Joe Dumanil here. Out of curiosity, not to not to change subjects a little bit, but or products. Are you aware of any meaningful helium production coming out of the San Juan Basin, or any historical attempts at helium exploration?
Yes, we worked with Walsh Engineering, and John Thompson, if he's on here, can talk, or Vern can too, about what some of the helium is on the Navajo reservation. John or Vern, do you want to jump in on that?
Yeah, this is John. I can speak to a little bit of that. We've been involved in several companies that have gone after helium plays. Most of it's located on the Navajo reservation, the known ones. The Navajo Nation Oil and Gas has actually gone after and been successful on a couple projects, and then more recently a Canadian company called Tacitus has done some stuff in the old Tosato dome field that was operated by Bayless for years. It was originally developed maybe by Amoco. I can't remember who the original operator out there was, but yeah, no, it's an ongoing and probably growing opportunity. As you know, dealing with the Navajo Nation and, and obtaining leases is probably one of the biggest hurdles there. But no, with the price of helium being, I think, over $200 an MCF, there's quite a bit of interest in it.
Well, we didn't put that on our chart of San Juan index prices, but the scale didn't go that high.
There's another company, and I believe they just sold IACX out of Dallas, and they have these and Praxair is a big player. You know, my understanding, and you know, I've just been involved in the operations, but on the market side, apparently the United States government controlled 100% of the helium supply, which has been depleted, and so now there's sort of this rush from the medical and space industries to try to secure helium, and it's created a lot of opportunities here. But IACX, I've dealt with those guys, and it's kind of interesting. And the point I guess I'm trying to bring is they have all of the developed the technology to actually do most of the processing on location, kind of these small units where strips everything out and then actually stores the helium, and then once those little, almost looks like a giant battery, but it's mounted on a trailer, and then just kind of truck will pull out the helium cylinders and plug in a new one, and off they go. So it's a pretty interesting process, and because you know, different companies get their legs around them, it'll be a growing opportunity.
Do you think the Navajos will embrace any sort of development with outside companies, or they want to keep it for themselves, or what's it like permitting wise and dealing with them, John?
It's challenging. They have been very difficult, and there's a lot of different entities involved. One of their own entities, the Navajo Nation Oil and Gas, can't even get a good deal with the Minerals Department. The gentleman that has ran that Navajo Nation Minerals for years has retired, and I think there's some hope that there may be some new opportunities, or at least, you know, the spirit of cooperation as far as trying to get some stuff going. But the Navajos, the one well that they did actually did a reentry on was very successful, but they could never get it off location. They were trying to figure out the best way to develop the lease, and couldn't make a deal with the Minerals Department. Funny enough, I received a call this week that they actually are going to try to go ahead and bring that well online. So I know there's some things happening, but yeah, it's very challenging on the reservation.
Well, good question, Joe. That's the place to be in the Four Corners, I guess, for helium. Does anybody have any ideas? Maybe you do, Jason, about how we get our name out there as a hydrocarbon basin, that we can offer large amounts of cheap domestic natural gas to the country.
Jerry, thank you. What I would tell you is that I've recently become chairman of an organization called the Western States and Tribal Nations Natural Gas Initiative. And that initiative is, in essence, looking at natural gas throughout the Rocky Mountains and looking at how we can export it. It was originally organized by Governor Hickenlooper in Colorado, and then some operating partners, including the Northern Utes out of Vernal, Utah, in working on promoting Uinta and Piceance gas. And just recently, the state of New Mexico has joined, the state of Wyoming has joined this consortium. And the goal is to look for alternative markets or export opportunities for Western states' natural gas. And so looking at Uinta gas or Piceance gas, moving north to Jordan Cove, which that export facility has its own challenges, supporting Canadian export through their own export terminal, but then also working to the south into Mexico, into a Costa Azul situation where they're converting an LNG import facility to export. So I think the other piece of that puzzle is looking at Permian gas moving to the Gulf and making sure that we have capacity in the pipe that's moving out of the Permian. And of course, with COVID and low commodity pricing, kind of all of that associated gas that's out of the Permian is a whole new conversation. But the bottom line, Jerry, is yes, there are a lot of conversations that are going on about how we can increase domestic consumption, but also then how we can boost up exports of North American natural gas to Asia. So thank you very much for that question.
Follow up to that, are there, I know there's been discussion about getting that piece of gas line into the Santa Teresa area so we could, San Juan Basin specifically earmarked for Mexico to go that way. And then a question alongside that is, what about the Baja Sempra plant that they want to turn around as a takeaway facility versus an intake facility?
Right. So the Baja Sempra plant is that Costa Azul facility that I was discussing earlier.
Okay.
Just to take the second part of your question first. And so Sempra is involved with this organization, the Western States and Tribal Nations. And what we're working to do is to raise awareness of Rocky Mountains natural gas. They initially were pretty focused on Permian gas, but we're, like I said, trying to raise some awareness of what we have here in the Rocky Mountain states. As it relates to takeaway capacity, that's one of the research projects that we're beginning to undertake as an organization, and not only looking at what our capacity is to Mexico, but then also what individual states, what opportunities might exist from individual states to improve capacity. The state of Wyoming is interested in some bonding legislation. New Mexico has some old bonding legislation on the books. all with the thought process of being able to export to Mexico. But initial conversations are that Costa Azul will be looking at half a B a day, and that potentially that capacity, that takeaway capacity, already exists out of the San Juan. We don't. I can't say that with 100% certainty, Jerry, and I know that we've been working on those issues. But there's some promise that we could supply some gas to the south.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions?